Hello, dear DSC candidates. Welcome back to my Grammar for Success channel. I am Koresh Babu, a retired lecturer in English from Hyderabad. In this video, I am going to explain all about the literary movements in a nutshell. I therefore request all of you to pay a very good attention to this video till the end without skipping it in the middle. I also request all of you to share and subscribe to my channel while supporting and encouraging me in my honest and selfless endeavor. Thank you so much. Now let's get into the video. Literary movements in a nutshell. Before I take up this very interesting and important topic, I would like to give you a few very important introductory points about these literary movements. Come on, let us look at all those introductory points. Here you pay attention. Literary movements refer to periods of literary activity. That means all the literary movements refer to means indicate what periods of literary activity. That means again all the literary movements are nothing but the periods of literary activity. That first point is clear, and they are characterized by a shared set of ideas, themes, styles, philosophies among writers and artists. So here these literary movements are characterized by means described by or indicated by, and by a shared means shared, common or joint or whatever you can call it, collective, you can say like that. A shared set of ideas, themes means subjects, styles also means very well, philosophies means beliefs, values or viewpoints, whatever the meaning you can take from it, and among writers and artists. Now the meaning of this point is these literary movements are indicated by or described by a set of ideas, themes, styles and philosophies shared among all the writers and artists. So that is the second introductory point about these literary movements. Now you go to the third important introductory point. What is that? They are unlike literary schools. These literary movements are unlike literary schools. So literary movements are different from literary schools. So there is a lot of difference between these two. What is about these literary schools means these literary schools focus on individual groups of writers. These literary schools focus or concentrate on individual groups of writers bound by, that means closely connected by shared techniques and direct influence. Shared techniques means procedures or methods, whatever you can say, and direct influence. So connected closely to all the shared techniques and direct influence. So this is about the literary schools. My next video is going to be on these literary schools. You are going to watch it very shortly. So now you go to the next important introductory point. They reflect broader cultural, political and intellectual trends that shape literary expression over time. So here they means the literary movements reflect means mirror or reveal what? Broader means wide ranging, cultural means social, social, and or educational, political also very well, intellectual means scholarly, intelligent, trends means tendencies, dhoranulu. Tendencies means trends or tendencies, dhoranulu. So here these literary movements reveal or reflect broader cultural, political and intellectual trends that shape literary expression over time. So all these cultural, political and intellectual trends are there to shape the literary expression over the time. So that is all about these literary movements. These literary movements are the periods of literary activities. They are characterized by set of ideas, themes, styles, philosophies among writers and artists, and these are unlike literary schools, and they reflect broader cultural, political, intellectual trends. So here these are the very important introductory points about these literary movements. Now we are going to learn about each and every literary movement. Come on, you pay a very good attention to this very good video. Now pay attention to the first literary movement. The first literary movement is classical movement. Classical movement means, in other words, traditional movement or conventional movement or orthodox movement, whatever you can call it. So here this movement existed between 8th century BCE and 5th century CE. That means BCE means before Christian era, CE means Christian era. So between this period, this classical movement existed. Now let us learn about this movement. Here some main points are given about this classical movement. What are they? Here you pay attention to the first one. The classical movement took roots in ancient Greece and Roman literature. So this classical movement took roots means originated or emerged in ancient Greece and Roman literature. So from ancient Greece and Roman literature, this classical movement emerged or originated, right? And that is the first point. And the second point about this movement is it paved a strong foundation for Western culture. So this classical movement, this traditional or conventional movement laid a strong foundation for Western literature. Now you can find some beautiful Western literature. The foundation for this Western literature is only this classical movement, right? And you go to the next point. The literature of this period laid emphasis on harmony, okay, order, balance of the people of those days. So the literature of this period, that means, the poets and the writers wrote their writings giving importance to harmony of the people. Harmony means what? Peaceful coexistence, okay. Harmony means agreement. Harmony means accord. So that is the literal meaning of this harmony. But here let us take its figurative meaning, that is nothing but peaceful coexistence. So the writers of this period gave importance to the peaceful coexistence of the people of those days. First point. They also gave importance to the order. Order means what? The state of peace and freedom. So that meaning you have to take from this order. And balance. Balance means stability, steadfastness, stability of the people. So the writers of this period or the literature of this period gave importance to harmony, order, balance of the people of those days. This is yet another important point about this classical movement. And you go to the next point. It focused on themes of heroism, moral truths, and the nature of humanity. So this classical movement focused on, concentrated on the themes of heroism. Heroism means, very well, heroic stories, okay, heroic stories or epic stories, moral truths, very well, ethical values, ethical truths and all that, and the nature of humanity, the behavior of human beings. So this classical movement focused on themes of heroism, moral truths and the nature of humanity. That does mean the writers of this period focused on the themes of heroism, moral truths and the nature of humanity. This movement focused on the themes means the writers of this movement. The movement means it is nothing but the writers, the poets, the artists of that movement. That meaning you have to take from this. And you go to the next important point. It used the formal structures such as the epic, tragedy and ode. So here this classical movement, that means the poets or the writers of this classical movement made use of the formal structures, formal literary structures. What are the formal literary structures? Such as epic. That means the poets of this period have written so many epics, and they wrote tragedies, they wrote ode. So epic, tragedy, ode, these are the formal literary structures. So therefore the poets of this movement or this period made use of these formal structures extensively in those days. So these are all in that way very, very important points about the classical movement. Okay, right. Now you move on to learn other important things of this movement. Historical context. What is the historical context of this classical movement? Here you pay attention. Being rooted being rooted means taken roots in the philosophical inquiries of those times, particularly those of Plato and Aristotle. This movement laid the groundwork for Western literature. So this is very important. That means, this classical movement which took roots in the philosophical inquiries. This classical movement took roots. That means this originated in the philosophical inquiries. Philosophical means rational or logical, okay, reasonable. Inquiries means, questions. So this classical movement took its roots in the philosophical inquiries of Plato and Aristotle, and afterwards this classical movement, what did it do? It laid the foundation work or the groundwork for the Western literature that you find nowadays. So for the present Western literature, what is the base, what is the groundwork, what is the foundation means? Only the classical movement was only the foundation for this present Western literature. Okay, this point now you have understood, and let us look at the writers of that period. Okay, here you pay notable figures and works, and Homer, that was the most prominent poet of that era, of that period, and he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. Okay, and you go to the next one, Sophocles, Oedipus Rex. It's a very interesting drama, and you read that if possible. Okay, the next one is Virgil. Virgil wrote the Aeneid. Okay, and here Aristotle, Poetics, defined the structure of drama. So in the Poetics, what is that? The structure of drama is defined or explained very clearly by Aristotle. So these were all the writers of that classical movement, and they composed all these great memorable books. This is all about the classical movement. So far you have learnt about the main points about the classical movement, the historical background of that classical movement, and you have also learnt the notable figures and their works. Okay, all these things you have learnt about this classical movement, and now let's move on to learn about the next important movement. Second one, medieval movement that existed between 5th and 15th century. So 5th and 15th century. Between this period, this medieval movement existed. Medieval means relating to the Middle Ages. Okay, medieval means relating to the Middle Ages period. Middle Ages. This is very important. So this movement belonged to this Middle Ages. Therefore, this is called medieval movement, right? And here you pay attention. Some main points about this movement are given here, and the first important point about this movement is the literature of this period dealt predominantly with, that means it dealt essentially with what? Religious themes. Religious themes means religious subjects, you know that very well. Chivalric tales means adventurous stories, you know very well. Moral instruction means teaching ethical values, moralistic values and all that. And allegories means symbolic representations, parables or fables, you can call them. So here the writers of this period dealt predominantly with religious themes, you know that very well. Chivalric tales, adventurous stories, adventurous tales, moral instruction. They wrote writings giving moral instruction to the people, and they also wrote allegories. Allegories means parables, fables, and symbolic stories and all such things. So that is the first feature of this medieval movement. Okay, and the next point about this movement is it also focused on morality and the human condition. Very simple. All these are very important points about this movement, and this medieval movement focused on, that means concentrated on morality. Morality means ethical values, moral values, and it also focused on what? Human condition. So the condition of the human beings of those days. So very simple. So this medieval movement focused on morality and human condition. That's the second important point. And the third important point is it was influenced by Christian doctrine and feudal society. The literature of this movement was influenced by Christian doctrine. Christian doctrine means Christian philosophy, Christian principles, Christian values, and so on. Okay, and feudal society also. Feudal means what? Feudal means it is a kind of a political organization in which the people will be working under under a landlord, okay, taking the land from that landlord. So that is in Telugu called Pettandari Vyavastha, something like that. So here Pettandari Samajamu, something like that. You can take the Telugu meaning from that. So the literature of this period was influenced by Christian doctrine, క్రైస్తవ సిద్ధాంతాల చేత అండ్ ఫ్యూడల్ సొసైటీ పెత్తందారి సమాజము చేత ప్రభావితము చేయబడింది బహుగా. సో సంథింగ్ లైక్ దట్ ఇన్ తెలుగు. ఓకే, అండ్ యూ గో టు ద నెక్స్ట్ పాయింట్. ద లిటరేచర్ వాజ్ ఆఫెన్ allegorical. Already I have told you about this allegorical. Animal farm is a great allegory. You know that were symbolic representation of some story, okay, some event, teaching some moral, teaching some truth to the people. So that is called allegorical. The next point about this medieval movement is the literature of this period was often allegorical. Allegorical means a symbolic representation of some event, giving moral or teaching some truth to the people. So that is there. Animal farm is there. It's an allegory. You know that very well. So the literature of this period was very often allegorical. That means most of the literature of this period was allegorical. Okay, and then it aimed at teaching moral and spiritual lessons. And here the literature of this period aimed at teaching the people some moral lessons or some spiritual lessons and all that. So any literature you take, that will teach the students some moral lessons or some spiritual lessons or some truth of life, whatever it is. You take any writing, so that will be teaching the people something or something or something. So here the literature of this movement taught the people what? Moral lessons and spiritual lessons. You go to the next point. Heroic epics and courtly romances were dominant forms. So in the medieval movement, the poets wrote heroic epics. Heroic epics means adventurous stories. So during this period, what happened? The writers, the poets wrote heroic epics and courtly romances. Courtly means elegant or dignified romances. Romances means love stories. So during this period, the heroic epics and dignified love stories were only dominant forms. So that means, during that period, the poets made use of these dominant forms only in their writings. Okay, they wrote mainly about adventure stories. They wrote mainly about courtly romances. These were only the dominant, that means very important literary forms that they made use of during this period. So this is all about medieval movement that existed between 5th and 15th centuries. Okay, and now you move on to other important things of this movement. Historical background or historical context. What is the historical context of this medieval movement? Let us look at that. This period was marked by feudalism. You know very well. This period was described by or characterized by feudalism. One point, feudalism means, already I have told you of this feudal society. Feudal means there will be a landlord. Under that landlord, the people will be working and taking the land from that landlord. Okay, that's some kind of political organization. Okay, you know that very well. Pettandari Vyavastha, something like that. So here, this period was marked by, characterized by feudalism, the rise of the church. During this period only, the church activities have taken their birth and all that, the blending of Christian and the classical traditions. So during this period only, what happened? The Christian traditions and the classical traditions were blended. This is the historical background of this medieval movement. Let us look at the writers of this great medieval movement. Notable figures and works. Okay, who are the notable figures? Dante Alighieri, the Divine Comedy, that is the work of this Dante, and you know very well. And Geoffrey Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales, and here Beowulf, that is Anonymous, that is his work, Beowulf. Okay, so these are the great writers who lived during that medieval period, and these are their great writings. Even today also, people are going through these great writings in MA English literature. Now you move on to the next literary movement. Third one, Renaissance movement that existed between 14th and 17th centuries, and the name itself tells you what this movement is. Okay, and here Renaissance means what? Renaissance means revival. Okay, okay, revival or rebirth, okay, you can also call it. Rebirth means punarujjivanamu. So Renaissance movement means rebirth movement or revival movement, you can call it. And what are the main points about this Renaissance movement means here this period was inspired by the rediscovery of Greek and Roman texts. So this period was inspired by means encouraged by or stimulated by what? The rediscovery means finding again. Discovery means finding. Rediscover means finding again what? Greek and Roman texts. Roman text means Roman writings, Roman manuscripts. So here this period, okay, the Renaissance movement was inspired by, encouraged by, stimulated by the rediscovery of Greek and Roman manuscripts or writings. That's the first point. Okay, and the next point about this is it focused on humanism. Okay, this Renaissance movement focused on, concentrated on humanism. Humanism means humanitarianism, Manavatavadamu, something like that. Individualism is nothing but individuality, Vyaktitvamu, and the potential human achievement. Potential means the capability of a human achievement. The capability of a human achievement means so man can achieve anything. Okay, he is capable of achieving anything in this world. So that is the meaning of this potential human achievement. So the literature of this period focused on humanism, humanitarianism, individuality, and the potential human achievement. That means the capability of human achievement. And you go to the next important point, it marked the birth of modern drama. So during this period only, this modern drama emerged or that came into existence, and sonnet traditions also. So these two things came into existence only during this Renaissance movement or Renaissance period. So this is a very important aspect. And here it celebrated human achievement and experience. So this Renaissance movement literature celebrated means honored what? Human achievement. Whenever the human beings achieved something great, the literature celebrated that achievement. Okay, and it also celebrated the experience of the people. So some people had wonderful experiences in their life. So the literature of this period honored or respected the human achievement and their experiences also, right? And the next important point, it made use of vernacular languages extensively. So here during this period, the writers, the poets made use of the vernacular languages. Vernacular language means the dialects or the regional languages, Pramtiya Bhashalu, they are called vernacular languages. Very extensively means very expansively or very widely in their writings. So these are all the important points about the Renaissance movement. Now you move on to learn other things of this movement, right? Now let us look at the historical context of this Renaissance movement. Historical context means, in other words, historical background. Okay, what is the historical background of this Renaissance movement? Here you pay attention. The Renaissance was a cultural rebirth. Cultural rebirth means, you know very well. In Telugu, Samskrutika Punarujjivanamu. Rebirth means Punarujjivanamu. Cultural Samskrutika. Samskrutika Punarujjivanam. So Renaissance itself means Samskritika Punarujjivanam, and following the Middle Ages. That means they took its birth in the Middle Ages. This Samskritika Punarujjivanam has taken its birth in the Middle Ages, right? And influenced, this Renaissance was influenced by the rediscovery of classical texts. You know very well, this Renaissance movement was very much influenced, very much impacted by the rediscovery of classical texts. Rediscover means, already I have told you about this word. Rediscover means the finding of something again. ఒక దానిని మళ్ళీ కనుగొనుట. సో దట్స్ కాల్డ్ రీడిస్కవరీ. సో ద రీడిస్కవరీ ఆఫ్ వాట్? క్లాసికల్ టెక్స్ట్. క్లాసికల్ మీన్స్ యు నో వెరీ వెల్, ట్రెడిషనల్, ఆర్థోడాక్స్ ఆర్ కన్వెన్షనల్, సాంప్రదాయబద్ధమైన, సనాతనమైన, వాట్ ఆర్ ద మీనింగ్ యూ కెన్ టేక్ ఫ్రమ్ దిస్ క్లాసికల్. సో ద రీడిస్కవరీ ఆఫ్ classical text. Text means what? Manuscripts or the writings. So this Renaissance movement was influenced by the rediscovery of classical texts and the rise of humanist philosophy. Humanist philosophy means Manavata Viluvalu. So during this period, there was a big rise of humanist philosophy or humanistic values. values. So this is the background of this Renaissance movement. And who are the great writers of this period means notable figures and their works. William Shakespeare was the prominent writer of this period. He was a great poet, you know very well. So many dramas he composed and so many sonnets also composed in his lifetime, you know very well. And Christopher Marlowe, Dr. Faustus, very beautiful drama and wonderful. You had better go through this and at least briefly also you come to know the story of this Dr. Faustus. Okay, very interesting. This was also a famous writer of that period, and Petrarch, and he wrote so many sonnets in his lifetime. So Petrarch was also a great poet of that period. And next Miguel de Cervantes, that is the name of this writer, that called Don Quixote. And you know very well, these are all the great writers, popular writers of this Renaissance period. Of course, other writers, other poets are also there, but these are only the prominent poets of that great movement. Okay, and now you move on to learn about the next very important movement. Fourth one, metaphysical movement or Baroque. This movement existed in the 17th century. Okay, what are its main points? Let us have a glance at them. This period was a reaction against the simplicity of the Renaissance poetry. So this period, this metaphysical movement, this period was what? A reaction. A reaction means a response or a reply against what? The simplicity of Renaissance poetry. So the Renaissance poetry was very simple. So the simplicity means you can say the plainness, okay, the easiness. So this metaphysical movement was much against the simplicity of the Renaissance poetry. During the Renaissance period, the poetry was so simple, even the ordinary people could also understand that poetry. So that much simplicity, that much plainness was there in the poetry of that period. But this period was a reaction against the simplicity of that Renaissance poetry. And here you pay attention. The poets of this period explored means discovered what? Philosophical means rational, logical or theoretical, and spiritual means divine, okay, divine, godly, questions. So they discovered philosophical questions and spiritual questions through intellectual wordplay. Through intellectual means intelligent or scholarly, that very well. Wordplay means punning or verbal wit. That means making use of the words wittily, చమత్కారంగా మాటలను వాడుటను, that's called wordplay. And also metaphor means it's a hidden simile, very well. Metaphor is nothing but a hidden simile. Okay, it's a simile, but it's a hidden simile. That's very important. So here the poets of this period explored philosophical and spiritual questions through intellectual wordplay and metaphors and all that. So this is the second important point about metaphysical movement. And the third one is they made use of far-reaching conceits. So here the poets of this movement or this period made use of far-reaching means wide-ranging conceits. Okay, and that means, in other words, extended metaphors. Metaphors means, just now I have told you, a metaphor is a literary device. It is nothing but a hidden simile. Okay, that point you know very well. They made use of far-reaching conceits. That means very big metaphors they have used. Okay, very broad metaphors they have used, extended metaphors they have used. That is the meaning of this far-reaching conceit. And here they explored intellectual and philosophical themes. So the poets of this period explored what? Intellectual or intelligent or scholarly, and philosophical means logical or theoretical themes. Okay, and they explored intellectual and philosophical themes. Themes means subjects, very well. And you go to the next important point about this movement. They used the dominant literary devices such as paradox, irony, and complex imagery. So here the poets of this period have made use of the dominant literary devices extensively. Dominant literary devices means very important literary devices. What are the very important literary devices? For example, paradox. Paradox means a statement having contradictions itself is called a paradox. You know that very well. Irony means satire or mockery or sarcasm, Vyangyamu, Vetakaram, something like that. Complex imagery. Complex imagery means very critical visualization or very critical mental pictures and all that. So here the poets of this period have used the dominant very important literary devices, for example paradox, irony and complex imagery. So these are the very important points about this metaphysical movement. And now let's move on to learn other important things of this movement. Next point about this metaphysical movement is the literature of this period maintained elaborate style. So it maintained very dignified style, very lofty style, okay, and emotional intensity, okay, the severity of emotions. Serious emotions are exhibited by the poets. And next, dramatic contrasts, dramatic differences they have made use of in their writings often reflected the complexities of human experience. And the literature of this period reflected complexities of human experiences, difficulties of human living or human life or human experience. So the difficulties of human life, the difficulties of human living, the difficulties of human experience. So all these things are exhibited or displayed by the literature of this period. And you move on to the next one, historical context. What is the historical context of this movement? Means this movement coincided with the counter reformation. So this movement coincided means so it also side by side existed with the counter reformation. Reformation, you know, very counter means opposite of reformation. So counter reformation and the rise of absolutism in Europe at the same time, you know, when this movement was existing, so there was counter reformation one thing, and there was also the rise of absolutism in Europe. Absolutism means dictatorship, authoritarianism, autocracy and all that thing, nirankushatvamu, something like that. So that was rising up during that period in Europe. And when this movement was existing, these two movements were also moving on parallel, reflecting the tensions of the time. So therefore the poetry of this movement reflected the tensions of the people of those times. And you move on to the next important point, notable figures and their works. Who are the notable figures? John Milton's Paradise Lost. So he existed in the 17th century and he wrote Paradise Lost, you know very well. And here John Donne, so this was a metaphysical poet. He wrote The Flea, The Sun Rising, and you know he wrote so many poems, you know very well. And John Donne and Andrew Marvell, this is also a metaphysical poet, to his coy mistress. And next George Herbert. These three are metaphysical poets. This is not the metaphysical poet. Baroque, that is somewhat different from metaphysical poetry, okay, Baroque. So therefore, you know, this poet belongs to that Baroque period, Baroque movement. So John Milton's Paradise Lost is there, okay. So these three are the metaphysical poets and these are their writings. So this is all about the metaphysical movement or Baroque, okay, right. And now you move on to the next important literary movement. Fifth one, neoclassical movement that existed between 17th and 18th centuries. Okay, what is this neoclassical movement? Let us look at the important points about this neoclassical movement. So the first one is this movement was a reaction against the emotionalism of the Renaissance, because during this Renaissance period what happened now, there was a lot of emotionalism. Emotionalism means undue display of emotions. Undue display of emotions. Emotions ను విచ్చలవిడిగా వాడుట, అనుచితంగా వాడుట, ఉచితంగా కాదు అనుచితంగా. Undue display of emotions is called emotionalism. So this movement was therefore a reaction, a response against what? The emotionalism of the Renaissance, okay. And here you pay attention, it sought to revive the order, the principles of classical art and literature. And this movement this movement attempted to revive means to bring back to life, okay. To revive means to bring back to life. I don't want to write the meanings everywhere. So this movement tried its best to bring back to life what? The order and the principles of classical art and literature. So this movement wanted to bring back to life classical art, traditional art, conventional art and literature. So this movement tried its best to bring back into life what the principles of classical art and literature. So that is the point you have to understand. It emphasized reason, morality, and decorum, and adherence to classical forms and ideals. That means, the poets of this period emphasized, that means gave importance to reason. Reason means reasoning power. Reasoning power means brain power or intellect. Okay, they gave importance to intellect, medha. Okay, intellect, medha. They gave importance to this morality. Okay, morality means moral values or ethical values and all that. Decorum means decency or politeness. Okay, and adherence to classical forms and ideals. Adherence means steady attachment. Okay, fixed attachment to classical forms and ideals. So the poets of this period gave top priority to all these things. Okay, what is that? Reason, morality, decorum, and they gave importance to the adherence to classical forms and ideals. And you move on to the next one. The poets and the writers focused on rationality. Rationality means rational feelings, rational beliefs, and you can also call it rationality means reasonableness. Okay, rational thinking and all that. So let us think in that way. The poets and writers focused on rationality and structure of the poetic forms. That means structure means the arrangement of poetic forms. So there were so many poetic forms in those days. They gave the importance to the structure of the poetic forms. So the rational thinking and structure of the poetic forms. So for these two things, they have given a lot of importance in those days by the poets and writers of that period. So next important point of this movement is they wrote. They means the poets of this movement or this period wrote the poems how in a satirical tone or in a didactic tone. Satirical means in an ironic tone or in a sarcastic tone. Vengyapu dhoranilo, వ్యంగ్యమైన తీరులో, something like that. And didactic tone. Didactic tone means instructional tone or educational tone. So the poets of this period wrote the poems in a satirical tone and a didactic tone. That thing is also clear. And now you move on to learn other important things of this movement. So another important point about this movement is they made use of strict poetic forms. Strict poetic forms means they made use of the poetic forms very strictly. That's the first point. And just like one example is given, heroic couplet. So just like the heroic couplet. What is this heroic couplet? A heroic couplet is nothing but a two-line iambic pentameter poem. A two-line iambic pentameter poem is called a heroic couplet. So there will be two lines, okay, 1 and 2, and in this 5 iambic feet will be there. Okay, 5 iambic feet. What is an iambic foot? Here you pay attention. Iambic foot. What is the iambic foot? Means there will be one unstressed syllable and one stressed syllable. So that is therefore called dadhum. Dadhum. This is one foot. This is an iambic foot because first unstressed syllable will be there, then stressed syllable will be there. So dadhum, dadhum. So this is an iambic foot. Such iambic feet will be 5 in each line. So 5 in the first line, 5 in the second line. So dadhum, 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 dadhum. So in this way, in the first line 5 iambic feet, in the second line 5 iambic feet, and such a poem is called heroic couplet. You know that very well. So during this period, the poets made use of strict poetic forms like the heroic couplet. This point also you have understood very clearly. Now let us learn about the historical background of this neoclassical movement. This neoclassical movement is a reaction against the emotional excesses of the Renaissance. Already I have told you about this point. During the Renaissance period, the poets made use of the emotions excessively. Okay, and without any restriction, and that's why that is called emotional excesses. These emotional excesses are called emotionalism. Okay, the very first point is that emotionalism. Therefore, this neoclassicism is a reaction, is a response, is an answer against the emotional excesses of the Renaissance. That point is clear. And this neoclassicism sought to revive the principles of classical antiquity. And this neoclassicism, what did it do? It tried to revive Revive means to bring back to life what? The principles of classical antiquity or classical literature and all that. Okay, and all these things you have learnt already. This is the historical background of this neoclassical movement. And now let us look at the writers of that period and also their writings, right? And here notable figures and their works. Who are the notable figures? Alexander Pope. This was a notable figure, notable poet of this period. He wrote The Rape of the Lock. And here next one is John Dryden. He wrote Absalom and Achitophel. And here Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travels. So in this way, these three were the notable figures or the popular poets of this neoclassical movement, right? And now you move on to learn the next important literary movement. Sixth one, Romantic movement. This movement existed between late 18th and mid 19th centuries. Okay, and what are the main points of this movement means? Here you pay attention. Romanticism emerged. That means this romantic movement emerged. Emerged means originated, okay, as a reaction against the rationality of neoclassicism. You know very well, during this neoclassicism, the poets gave top priority to rationality. Rationality means rational thinking, rational feelings, rational opinions and all that. So against this rationality, this movement is a kind of reaction. As a reaction against this rationality of neoclassicism, this came into existence or this emerged in the late 18th century, right? And here you pay attention, it celebrated emotion, nature and individualism. So this romantic movement celebrated means honored or respected what? Emotion. Emotions means feelings and all that. Nature means, you know very well, individualism means individuality. So the poets of this period gave importance to emotion, nature and individualism. So that is one point. And it explored the supernatural, medieval themes and folk traditions. The poets of this movement gave top priority to supernatural. Supernatural means relating to God, relating to some spirit, relating to devil. Such things are called supernatural. Beyond nature is called supernatural. The poets of this period gave importance to supernatural matters and medieval themes and folk traditions. Folk means common people of that place are called folk. Folk tradition means the traditions of the common people that you know very well. So during this period, what happens now? The poets gave importance to the supernatural matters, the medieval themes and folk traditions. That is the important point. You go to the next point. It laid emphasis on nature and the sublime. So that means the poets of this movement gave top priority or gave a lot of importance to nature. That is the first thing. And they also gave importance to the sublime. The sublime means outstanding, spiritual, intellectual and moral worth. So this worth is called the sublime. Utkrushtamainadi, whatever it may be. So that's why the Telugu meaning of this, the sublime means what? Utkrushtamainadi. So that means the poets of this period gave importance to nature, first point, and they also gave importance to the outstanding spiritual worth, intellectual worth, and moral worth. Okay, so for these two things, they gave top priority. You go to the next important point. Its dominant feature was its use of imagination and visionary language. That means the poets of this movement made use of imagination. Fanciful assumption is called imagination, or creative ability is called imagination. So they made use of this imagination or the creative ability, and they also made use of visionary language. Visionary language means fanciful language or bombastic language or colorful language or lofty language in their writings. So these are the main features of the romantic movement. And now you move on to other important things of this movement. Historical context. What is the historical context? This period emerged in response to the Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution. So you know very well this romantic movement emerged. Emerged means originated or came into existence. Why? In response to Enlightenment. Enlightenment means what? It's a philosophical movement. Okay, philosophical movement. Okay, philosophical movement of the 18th century. Okay, of the 18th century, which rejected traditional, social, religious, and political ideas, okay, and emphasized the rationalism. So this is all about this enlightenment. So what is this enlightenment? It is a philosophical movement of the 18th century which rejected this traditional, social, religious, political ideas and emphasized only rationalism. So this is what the enlightenment, okay, it's a kind of philosophical movement of the 18th century, and this romantic period emerged in response to this enlightenment, one point, and it also emerged as a response to industrial revolution. Industrial revolution means, in Telugu, parisramika viplavam, something like that. So in response to these two things, this period emerged or came into existence. This is the background of this romantic movement, and it also aimed at celebrating the individual and the beauty of the natural world. So this romantic movement aimed at celebrating what? The individual, okay, the individuality, okay, the individuality of the people and the beauty of the natural world. So it wanted to honor the individuals or the individuality, and it also wanted to honor the beauty of the natural world. So these are the important points under the historical context of this romantic movement. Now let us look at the writers and their works. Okay, notable figures and works. Who are the notable figures? William Wordsworth, he was the notable figure or notable poet of this period, and he wrote lyrical ballads, very well. And Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Kubla Khan, and next John Keats, Ode to a Nightingale, and next Percy Bysshe Shelley, that is Prometheus Unbound. So these were the greatest poets of this romantic movement. So this is all about the romantic movement. Now let's move on to learn about the next important literary movement. Seventh one, Victorian movement. This movement existed between 1837 and 1901. So this is also a very important movement. And what are its important points? Here you pay attention. The literature of this period reflected the social, moral, and industrial changes of the time. So the literature of this period, the writings of this period reflected what? The social changes of the time, the moral changes of the time, the industrial changes of the time. That's very simple. Social, moral, industrial changes of the time. So the poetry of this period reflected, the writings of this period reflected all these important things, and here it explored or looked into what? Issues of class, gender, and morality. So it looked into what? The issues of class. Class means, as lower class, middle class, upper class, class system. Class distinction existed in those days. So it looked into the issues of class, gender, so male, female, so the gender, and morality, the issues of morality, okay. So here in this way, the poets of this period looked into the issues of class, gender, and morality, and next it aimed to combine realism with moral instruction. So realism means what? So showing the persons or the things as they are, that is called realism, very well. So the poets of this period aimed at combining realism with moral instruction. So that means, moral instruction should be realistic, and moral values must be given to the people realistically and all that. So that is what they tried to do during this Victorian movement. And next, it sought to explore social injustice. The poets of this period tried their best to deal with social injustice, and they wanted to do some kind of justice to the people of the times, okay. They exposed this social injustice wherever that existed to all the public. So that was there. And next, it focused on domestic life and family values. The poets of this period focused or concentrated on domestic life and family values. You know that very well. So it made use of detailed realism and complex narrative structures. So during this period, the poets tried their best to make use of detailed realism. That means, they wanted to display or they wanted to exhibit the things in the realistic manner, okay. Realistically, they wanted to show the things to the public, and they also made use of complex narrative structures. That means they made use of difficult narrative structures or arrangements in their writings. So these are all the important points about the Victorian movement. And now let us look at the writers of this period and also their writings. Notable figures and their works. Charles Dickens, David Copperfield, this was a popular poet of that period. George Eliot, another popular poet who wrote Middlemarch, okay. And Thomas Hardy, another important poet of that period. Tessa D. Urber and next Alfred Lord Tennyson, very beautiful poet, who wrote In Memoriam. These are all the notable figures or the poets of that Victorian period. Okay. With this, the first part of the literary movements will come to an end. Now we are going to take up one small exercise in order to check our comprehension of this topic. Okay, right. Now I am going to give you the small test consisting of 10 questions. Please solve all the questions after going through this video thoroughly well. Right. Multiple choice questions on literary movements. The first question is, which literary movement emphasized harmony, proportion and balance? Romanticism, classical, modernism, naturalism. Second question, the Canterbury Tales is a notable work from which literary period? Renaissance, medieval, neoclassicism, romanticism. You go to other questions. Third question, who is considered a key figure of the romantic movement? John Milton, William Wordsworth, Gustav Flaubert, T.S. Eliot. Fourth question, Paradise Lost is a significant work from which literary movement? Baroque, Neoclassicism, Romanticism, Modernism. Fifth question, the literary movement that emerged in response to the Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution is? Modernism, Romanticism, Neoclassicism, Postmodernism. Sixth question, the movement that emphasizes intuition and the inherent goodness of people is? Realism, transcendentalism, naturalism, postmodernism. I'm very sorry to say that this question is not supposed to be given in this test. It is to be given in the second part because I'm going to teach you about this transcendentalism in the second part. That's why this question is wrongly given. So please don't think otherwise. Now you move on to other questions. Seventh question, which movement is characterized by elaborate style and emotional intensity? Neoclassicism, Baroque, Romanticism, Realism. Which of the following authors is associated with the neoclassical movement? John Keats, Jonathan Swift, Emily Dickens, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Ninth question, the focus on the individual and nature is a hallmark of which movement? Realism, Romanticism, Modernism, Postmodernism. Last question of this small test is, which literary movement is characterized by a return to classical ideals and forms? Romanticism, Neoclassicism, Modernism, Contemporary. Right. With this small exercise will come to an end. Now let us look at the answers for all these questions. So these are all the answers for the questions from 1 to 10. And with this video will come to an end. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hello dear DSC candidates, thank you so much for watching this part 1 literary movements in a nutshell. And if you have any problem in understanding any of the things I have dealt with in this video, please make a mention of it in the comment section. Okay, I'm here to clarify your doubts. Don't hesitate to text me your doubts in the comment section. And with the second part of this video, I will be back to you. Until then, bye, see you, I love you.